Hey, it's Friday night. Let's have a glass of wine on the porch. Hey, going out to dinner. Let's have a cocktail before dinner and then wine at dinner. Like when I was not drinking is when I really noticed the difference. I was just more clear headed and just more present. Like everything about my life got more clear headed. Hey, this is Coach Mo Faul. I am an ex CEO, ex COO, and about to lay out the soul powered revolution. And you'll win in life by having your soul on fire. Hey everyone, it's Coach Mo Faul. I am the CEO and founder of Your Soul Powered Careers. But today, I'm doing a little teeny deviation because all the work that I do with professional women involves bringing them to their highest self through the soul. And when you empower yourself on the inside, that's when you can make the adjustments on the outside. Basically, when you become a better version of you, you can take all that education, expertise, and experience and up level. You are more likely to say the right things in meetings and influence and just know what the right moves are. When your internal guidance system is lit up, you have a beacon of how to be and who to be every day. And I have with us today Sandra Parker, who is a friend of mine, fellow coach. We met in a coaching group we were in together. And we reached out recently because I know her work. And I said, Sandra, I'd love to talk about what you do and why you do it and share my angle on what you do so that we could increase the dialogue. And actually, Sandra, what I want to do is like normalize the conclusion of what we're going to talk about today. Like make it something that why would we even be talking about this? And I'm sure that in many ways in the work that you do, and by the way, great job with all the LinkedIn posts and that sort of thing, really raising the awareness of the work that you do. And before people are like, okay, well, what work does she do? Sandra Parker, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Mo. So, really delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. So, I am someone who helps people get control over alcohol. So, you could describe me as a sobriety coach or a control alcohol coach. What I'm passionate about is helping people get control in a way that works for them, whether they want to quit drinking completely or to drink occasionally or to moderate, and really happy to come on here. A lot of the people that I work with can relate to that high achieving, needing alcohol to unwind. So delighted
Right.
to answer any questions and share whatever I
Yeah.
can to help. Thank you.
Yeah. Maybe you could shed some light on some of the aspects of my journey. We were talking about that a little bit before we went on camera. Over the past several years, I just found as I aged and maybe as my liver got a little bit tired, I just wasn't handling alcohol in the way that felt as good as it did in my younger years. I wasn't bouncing back. And, I know that part of drinking alcohol is like being in denial, but I wasn't a heavy drinker ever. I was a typical social drinker, typical, hey, it's Friday night, let's have a glass of wine on the porch. Hey, going out to dinner, let's have a cocktail before dinner and then wine at dinner. Like no boozy Saturday nights and throwing up in the garbage can. I mean, maybe once or twice in my 20s, but really not. That's just, I was, let's call it not having a problem drinking. But what happened is that my body just started not feeling good when I was even drinking one drink. I know there are some people, because I'm a registered nurse, I know that there's some people whose bodies turn alcohol quickly into formaldehyde and they literally get sick because of how their body processes alcohol. I'm not talking about that way. I'm just talking about my body not being able to handle, dare we call it, the poison that I was introducing into my body. Because really, in all the research I've done, and since I am a registered nurse, I did some research and really tried to understand some of the physiology. I mean, bottom line is it's poison. We're poisoning our body, right? I mean,
Yep.
and I'm sure you deal with a lot of people just like me in your work. Maybe there are some people who legitimately have an alcoholic addiction. I just was over it last year. It's been a bit over a year. It's been like 13, 14 months. I can't help but to count it because I know exactly when I stopped and why I stopped. I just was feeling really shitty a year ago Christmas, and I'm like, that's it. That's it. Well, what about New Year's? No, I'm not gonna. No. And so I stretched my dry January into February. I knew that I wasn't going to go back, but I wasn't prepared to like tell family and friends that I was no longer going to be imbibing with them, because that's one of the things for me. So let's go into the first thing I mentioned. You work
Yep.
with people all the time who are understanding that they need to do something different. Tell me what I was maybe feeling, or as the expert in being a sober coach, what was going on with me that you
Yes.
see all the time with your clients?
It's such a great point because most of us grow up with this myth that there are certain people that are so-called alcoholics and they
Yeah.
have some sort of defective gene, and we are
Yeah.
to pity them and feel sorry for them, and we shouldn't offer them a drink, right? They've got a problem and everybody else is
Yeah.
fine. So when I
Yeah.
grew up, the message was drink responsibly, right? Now, we don't tell
Mhm.
people to smoke responsibly or take any other drugs responsibly, but we tend to have that weird understanding of alcohol, that conditioning that we it's a harmless indulgence and we just need to take control. In terms of what you've described, the way that I like to explain this, when people, a really popular question for people to ask me is, how do I know I've got a problem, right? And there's a couple of things I like to say. The first one is, if you're drinking more than you want, right? So it's not about, is it a bottle? Is it a bottle and a half? Is it 2 bottles? Is it more on holiday? What if I'm taller? Can I take more? Right? It's really about, are you drinking more than you want? And what you've described is what I
Yeah.
love, because if we take a step back and we stop assuming that alcohol is essential for a happy life, we can ask a different question. So rather than saying, is it so bad that I need to do something about it? We could say, maybe I'm not living the life that I want to because of it. So one of my
Yeah.
clients told me he came to me because he felt that with alcohol, he was about a 6 out of 10. And this guy worked in a hedge fund. He had a happy marriage. On the
Yeah.
outside, everything looked great. And he said to me, Sandra, I'm not going to lose my job. I don't think I'm going to
Yeah.
lose my marriage, but I'm not settling for a 6, right? So it's more of a question of,
Nice.
is
Yeah.
alcohol
That's right.
stopping you living the life that you want to live? And you said it was you weren't feeling good. So rather than saying, is it bad enough I need to stop, just say, well, what's it adding? And if you don't feel it's adding something, then that's a great time to just decide now's the time to do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I used to, not used to, I do. I tell my clients who are coming to my annual retreats not to drink alcohol for the week leading up to it. And when I used to run
Interesting.
marathons, I would not drink alcohol for the week leading up to my longer runs.
Yep.
So I inherently knew that there was like a negative physiological aspect to even normal drinking, whatever that normal is, 1 or 2 drinks a day. And it's funny because as I'm thinking about it, being with you today, I used to be like this in my meditation practice. I used to meditate when things got rough. And so it was like a temporary solution. And that's how non-drinking for me was before. It was like a temporary solution. I need to be at the top of my game, so not going to drink. But I never did the math on the other side of that equation, which is, well,
Yeah.
therefore, why should I go back to it? And with my meditation practice, I used to meditate when things were rough. And I'm like, well, why don't I just do it all the time? It's like we don't carry that logic through. We sort of just have a temporary placeholder. Why is that?
Well, I think it's because we all grow up thinking alcohol is this magic elixir, right? No social event is complete without alcohol. So when you said
Yeah,
earlier about
true.
Christmas, the next thing was New Year, right? Oh, you're not drinking at New Year. So we have so many times, even throughout a day, where we're conditioned to believe that we should drink. So if we have an
Yeah,
inherent belief that alcohol is good and alcohol enhances our life overall, then logically we feel that not drinking is being deprived. And so we will
right.
try and avoid the evidence that maybe it's not that great. One of my clients, when she done my program, she came up with a brilliant expression that I love, where she looks at any occasion and she says, "What will alcohol add?" Right? And she sort of, because when you really learn about what it is, it's not half as good as we think, right? We get an initial high and then we actually feel worse for a couple of hours. So you're a nurse, you'll know about like the dopamine hit.
Yeah.
But after
Yeah.
that initial hit, our brain seeks to recalibrate. So when we realize that actually we're trading in a short buzz for a couple of hours of feeling worse, when you start realizing that and you start looking at it differently, you start shifting from thinking that you will be, or your life will be less than without it. Because what you're saying about meditating, and I completely relate to that, I was smiling when you said that, is it can feel like a bit of a pain, right? It can feel like a bit of a pain.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do it when we really need to. And it's the same with
Right.
alcohol. If I'm really sick, I won't drink, because actually it's quite sad not drinking. That's what most of us think. But if I'm
Yeah.
okay, then I'll drink again. But if we
Yeah.
really knew that it wasn't adding half of what we thought, and actually we could be losing out a lot by drinking, we don't see it as something that we're going to feel. We don't see it as missing out. We actually see it as potentially being better.
Right. And I know in looking at the sort of the science behind this, as I was both anticipating leaving behind alcohol and also the first few months, the actual anticipation of having a drink is part of the high. It's
Yes.
it's the anticipation that you're going towards something that's going to relieve your anxiety or stress. You actually get a positive neurotransmitter flow just in that anticipation, which could arguably be the best part of drinking, is the
Yeah.
before the drink, like the non-alcoholic part of looking forward to it, looking forward to the
Yeah.
relief is in and of itself a part of the high. Like I
Yes.
never thought about that until I started researching it, and I'm like, yeah, that is true. Like just let's go down and meet some people at the bar and have a drink. Like just deciding to meet up with people and anticipating the nice time of being with people had maybe somewhat, but less to do with the alcohol, but more about how exciting that feels. Oh, let's do something. Let's go meet people. Let's go. Right. I mean, it's just sort of uncanny how it's before the alcohol is like the best thing.
It's, yeah, I think it's been conditioned so much. There's an exercise
Right.
I ask people to do where I
Yeah.
ask them to look over 7 days, and I say to them,
Okay.
how many times, or even 24 hours, how many times is alcohol referenced, right? You switch on a TV show,
Yeah.
guess what?
Right.
Everybody's drinking,
Oh,
right? Whether it's a
everyone.
drama, whether it's a chat show, right? Then you go to a bar, happy hour, or you sit down at a restaurant. The first thing they do is they hand you the wine list, right? They have even have the wine glasses in front of you. Even things like, you go to the gym. My gym used to give out glasses of white wine on a Friday afternoon because it's Friday. My hairdresser has cocktail of the day. It's just like the cinema now serves alcohol. So I suppose if you are surrounded all the time, then it's quite hard. Like in the example you've given, I think it can be quite hard to think about what it will be like meeting your friend without a drink, because
Right.
the two are so
Right.
interlinked.
Yeah. And and what I realized also is how much bandwidth of anticipation it took up as far as planning the evening or planning the day. Like if I'm
Yeah,
drinking, I can't this or that, or I'm gonna have to, like it becomes like a part of planning. And I didn't realize how frequent that was happening. Like if I coach a fair amount of times on the weekday evenings. So if I didn't, I would always have a decision for myself. Let me just put this shade down. I would have a decision for myself whether I was going to have a glass of wine or not that evening if I wasn't working. Like that was
Yeah.
legitimately a decision that I'm like, why would I bother myself with that decision? But I did because I'm like, oh, do I
It,
want to have a glass of wine tonight because I'm not working?
yeah.
It
Well,
intruded in every decision.
I like one of the things that I find interesting as well is when people when people are drinking, they hate being the designated driver, right? It's like, oh, I have to drive. I'm not allowed to drink, right? That's what we say. Oh, I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm doing this thing, but I have to drive, right? Then when people don't need alcohol anymore, they start saying, I get to drive, right? And it's like, you're on
Right,
holiday, maybe you rent a car, you're a bit more
right.
adventurous, you can go to a restaurant, or you
Yeah.
enjoy being the responsible friend, right? Because you're like, I'll make sure Mo gets home on time, she's not going to leave her
Hmm.
mobile behind, and you can
Right.
leave when you want. So I think you're right, it does take because we want to justify it so much, we will spend time planning how we can have it. We will compensate for it. So what you're saying about, I won't have one when I'm coaching, but if I'm not coaching, yes, I can. And will I? And should I? And how many have I had? It's quite exhausting.
It is. It is. And not having that decision to make for greater than a year has been liberating. And I've had plenty of reasons to drink this past year plus. I had two nieces who got married. My mother died. Like there was plenty of time to
Yeah.
say, oh, but I just no longer want the dulling effect of it. I
Yeah.
just
And
I just don't want that feeling.
good for you. I'm curious about what you noticed. So what's interesting about, and I'm sorry about losing your mom. I know she was an amazing
Thanks.
lady.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that you've shared is like the joy as well as the sadness, right? So when I coach people when they've had a bereavement, what's interesting is that somebody could have lost somebody like 5, 10 years earlier, or they could have been divorced, and they haven't really processed it because they've been
Right.
drinking.
Yeah.
But when you are not drinking, the way that you're able to process that grief, I'm guessing, or I'm curious, did you feel that losing your mum, that you were able to just acknowledge more how you felt? Would you feel that you were able to? I know that grief is
Yeah.
not linear, but did you feel in a sense you were able to work through some of that sort of raw emotion?
Yes, and I would say all of the emotions that get washed down, I won't say washed away because they don't go away. They get washed down.
Yeah,
So everything, including perhaps in the early months, and I didn't keep a exact record of this, but feeling a little embarrassed about not drinking, feeling a little insecure about being that person, feeling
yeah,
like I had to have like an excuse. Like those feelings were right here. They weren't going anywhere.
yeah,
I sort of had to deal with them because they
yeah,
weren't getting washed down.
yeah,
And I found that all of my days, I was more present. I was having more real feelings. And my mom was declining. She was at an advanced age. She was declining for a couple of years. And that last year of her life, or last 7 months or so, I was more present with her. I was able to sort of grieve before she died, watching and seeing and be able to feel what I was feeling. I would say everything became more vivid in the feeling zone of things. And I would say also that I understand and appreciate why people want to drink because they don't want to feel those things.
yes,
And if you can't
yeah,
feel the sadness, you're really not equipped to feel the excitement when your niece gets married. It all starts
yeah,
getting into this I want to blunt my feelings. It's like in an inferno that we keep dousing. And it doesn't have to be a dangerous one, but I just find that I was able to feel everything I was going through,
yeah.
the highs
That's
and the lows.
fantastic. When it comes to the emotions, I think of when we're drinking, it's a great way to describe it, blunting out. I sometimes describe it as numbing. When we try to avoid
Right.
those emotions, do you remember that game Whack-A-Mole? Um,
Sure. Yeah.
I
Right.
I think it's a bit like that, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm feeling really uncomfortable right now about, my stressful job or whatever it is, somebody's health. I'll have a drink, right? That will take it away. And it's like the whack-a-mole, right? So it'll go away for a short space of time, but then at like 3 a.m., bing, it goes up
Yeah.
again, right? And
Right.
eventually that can make us ill because we keep trying
Yeah.
to suppress it. And you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It's not easy. It takes a bit of work. Like that's why a lot of people do need support. Like what you're
Right.
describing is you've done, like, you've learned a lot about yourself, right, as you become a coach.
Mm-hmm.
You've always been somebody that I've looked up to in terms of meditation, like inner self,
Mm-hmm.
like you've done all that work. So
Mm-hmm.
that would have helped you massively. But for a lot
Yes.
of people, something like dry January can be really, really tough, right? Because we get to the start of the year and it's like, right, no alcohol, right? It's kind of like beating ourselves up for having a good time in
Yeah.
December, like,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
And we pick the
It's punishment.
coldest,
It's not fun.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
punishment.
We picked the coldest, kind of like in some ways toughest month of the year in the Western Hemisphere. And the biggest problem is all those emotions that you've described, people suddenly realize that they haven't dealt with them and they come up
Yeah.
and they
Right.
associate that uncomfortable feeling with that's how not drinking feels.
Yes.
So they,
Sure.
they don't have the tools to tackle the root cause. And so they desperately miss the alcohol. They can't wait until January's over, and they even drink more in February. So without the tools to handle the difficult things, it is harder.
Yeah.
But what you've shared that I love is you need to remember you're missing out on the upside as well. So, like being at your two nieces' weddings, right? Remembering everything,
Yeah. Yep.
like waking up the next morning with that great feeling, like I've had a great time and I can remember the whole day. A lot of people miss out on that when they're drinking. So it's great
Well,
to
and
experience that.
yeah, and I got to say something, sorry to interrupt a little bit, but I just got sort of excited because I remembered in my one niece's wedding, my brother-in-law, so my sister's partner, was very ill with cancer. He was able to make it to the wedding and he danced a dance with my sister and then he fell ill. And so he was rushing back to his room. I rushed back with him.
Wow.
I was able to be responsive, present,
Yeah.
cool-headed while he was having a didn't end up being a real health crisis, but it could have been. And just as you're talking about that, I'm thinking, yeah, if I would have been drinking, like I probably would have had the same action, but I wouldn't have been cool-headed. Who knows if I would have stumbled trying to help him walk. I mean,
Yeah.
all sorts of unwanted potential was there if I had been drinking. And as it was, I was not, and I was able to be very responsive to this gentleman who was having a health issue and he actually died 1 month later.
I mean, how amazing that you were able to be there for him, right? So you're like the nurse in the family, and when people
I,
really needed to rely on you, that's fantastic.
yeah. I just put that together. It didn't seem different, but now that I'm talking with you about it, I'm really, really grateful that I could fully be present for when he really needed someone to be there for him. Yeah, I mean, not just
That's
designated driver, but
fantastic.
like designated emergency response friend.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about the clarity as well, because one of the things that surprised me when I stopped drinking, because I was a binge drinker, I drank a lot more than you, but I could easily go for periods of time without drinking. And so because of that, I didn't think the sort of brain fog, fuzzy headed, I thought that was quite a temporary thing. And I was
Mm,
quite surprised at how sharper I felt. Like I could see things a lot clearer. And I'm curious
mm-hmm.
because
Yeah,
with the work that you do and guiding like women with their career, going for an
yeah.
interview, changing role, What did you
Right.
notice about your sharpness?
I noticed that I wasn't having to ramp myself up as much. I Even if I wasn't drinking, I felt like I was sort of carrying a little bit of sluggishness around. And I do coach every other Saturday ish. I coach regularly on Saturdays, and I'd be like, well, it's Friday night, and then I'll just wake up and do my coaching. But this past 12 months, I didn't drink on Friday, and my Saturday morning coaching, I was just more clear headed and just more present. Like everything about my life got more clear headed. And I will say, even though I did know that there were things that were taking me longer to recover from, when I was not drinking is when I really noticed the difference, because things become normal that we do. Oh, this is just normal. Oh, this is just a Saturday morning little feeling a little groggy. I'll just go out for a walk and I'll feel fine. Like we just like handle the bullshit. I mean, that's just,
Yeah,
we I mean, that's what it is. We just sort of like handle the bullshit.
absolutely. Like there's something I want to share that I think would be great for your clients to,
Mhm.
if anyone's like recognizing themselves in you, things that will be
Right.
encouraging. What I've
Mhm.
noticed, because what you're describing more is when people are high achieving, you just push through, right? So if
Yes.
somebody said to you,
Right.
how do you feel on a Saturday morning? You probably said, not too bad, or I manage,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's what high achieving people do. They push through. What I've
Yep.
noticed from coaching people and specifically looking at their career is quite interesting. The first thing that happens is they have more energy. So when people are
Yes.
pushing through, something has to give, right? They will probably do everything they can to do what needs to be done in their job. And they'll take a lot of pride in that because nobody at work will really know there's a problem. But
Right.
they're not, their energy's off, they're getting tired in the afternoon. So the first thing they'll notice is they'll get more energy, they're more productive, their energy is consistent throughout the day.
Yes. Yeah.
Second thing they notice is they feel sharper. So they might be in a meeting and they realize they can make connections and can see things quicker. So if they were feeling a
Mhm.
bit worse for wear, they might be in the meeting saying to themselves, "Don't say anything. Not feeling great today. Like I'll just try and keep my head down and not be noticed." And that might change
Right.
from, "Hang on, I want to share this or that." So they start, and because of those two things, they start feeling more confident and they start backing
Mhm.
themselves more.
Right.
And it's amazing the amount of people I've spoken to who have got getting their jobs done quicker, they're enjoying it more. Like particularly as like, women, they reach 45, 50, whatever, they blame the menopause. It turns
Mhm.
out it's not the menopause, but so
It's
many
the
people
alcohol.
say something along the lines of, "I was planning to go part time. I thought I couldn't handle it, but I'm feeling great, and I'm enjoying my job more than I have in the last 5 or 10 years."
Yeah. Yeah, I no doubt. I also think that what you just described again gets normalized, and then as we get older our body can't handle as much, so we do of course ascribe it to being middle-aged and menopausal, and everyone's normalizing that. Like
Yes.
everyone. Like
Yeah.
everyone. It's
It's
become a thing. And I
yeah.
think I'm interested what you think about this, but I'm pretty sure that in the next couple of generations, if not the next one, they will think about alcohol in perhaps the same way we now think about smoking.
I think there's a lot of encouraging signs. So there was a study done in the UK in the last couple of years, and they spoke to people who were young people, age 18 to 25. So in the UK, the age we're allowed to drink is 18. So it was like
Okay.
from the age everybody in that group was legally allowed to drink. And they asked them if they considered themselves a drinker, and 25% said no. And that's a lot higher than it's been before. And so I think that there's a couple of different things that are happening. First, that this next generation are seeing it as their parents' drug of choice. And, we historically, we like to do something different.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they're saying, I don't want that. There's more of an emphasis on health, fitness, well-being. Younger people feel more comfortable talking about their mental health than our generation ever did.
yeah.
So
Right,
there's
right.
probably less of a feeling that they need to hide things or to, bottle things up. People call out
Literally.
things like body shaming now.
Yeah,
So I think there's a lot of
yeah.
encouraging signs. And I think
Interesting.
the other thing that's
Hmm.
happening is more people are talking about not drinking. There's more alcohol free drinks available,
Yes, yes, that's
and
true.
there's a lot of celebrities that are like more so than I can remember. Like I
Yeah.
remember, like I stopped drinking 7 years ago,
Okay.
and I remember going to my local grocery store to find some alcohol-free drinks. And you like this as a nurse. It reminded me when I was buying my auntie chocolate for Christmas, and she's like diabetic, right? And it reminds me of going to Boots, and there was always like a sad little display, right? Chocolates for diabetics, right? In the this was like a really big, like kind of quite posh supermarket, and they had a tiny little section of alcohol free drinks. And I was like, gosh, it was all a bit depressing, like it felt like to ring a bell, like non drinker alert. But now there's
Right.
loads, right? And there's French like wine, like vineyards are now growing and cultivating grapes to try and get good quality alcohol free drinks. There's a lot more alcohol free beers. So I do agree with you that the signs are very promising. I think that
Yeah.
you're right in comparing it to cigarettes, because I remember when I started researching this about 10 years ago, and this is quite funny, coming across adverts for cigarettes in the US and in the UK where doctors were prescribing them
That's right.
or
That's right.
endorsing them. And they were
Yes.
saying things like, this particular brand is great for asthma, or this is good for digestion. And you sort of think, did people really believe that? But I feel that there's been some
They
interesting
probably
things
did.
happening in the US. Yeah,
Yeah.
like really, like the legislation, like for a long time with smoking, it was covered up. The smoking companies were very powerful.
Hmm.
All the research about the links with like things like lung cancer, and if you look at a packet of cigarettes now, it's really quite shocking. Like I don't know what it looks like in the US, but in the UK it's typically got like a diseased lung on it, a picture. And it's really, when somebody tells you they smoke, I think most people feel sorry for them, and they might think, I wonder if they're trying to give up. Or so I think if alcohol went the same way,
Yeah.
I don't think it's right to ban things, because I think that
Hmm.
isn't really how you win people's hearts and minds. But I think
Right.
if people
Right.
were educated on alcohol, and we stopped pretending that it wasn't a drug, and we stopped pretending that it wasn't addictive, then that would
Right.
be massive for the
Right.
next generation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's such a human legacy of drowning our sorrows, not
Yes.
not having the right language, communication, or mental fitness to talk about feelings that aren't comfortable. And I think that the mental health awareness over probably it really spiked and increased over the years of COVID. We now have more language, we have more acceptance. People are taking their mental health as something as serious as if they had, you know, a broken leg or something. Like it's something that has to be taken care of. And I think that as human beings continue to evolve, my hope is that society will continue to see the human experience as something that is full of feelings, and some of them are uncomfortable and inconvenient, But it's like this whole human experience is meant, I believe, to pull us together so that when someone is sad or is having sorrow, it's to someone to love them through that, not to take it away or grab them or say, "Why aren't you feeling better? Your mom died 6 months ago. Isn't there enough time to grieve?" Like there's more compassion, I think, that comes out as we allow each other to feel what we're feeling versus masking it. And I think we've got a long way to go. And, this is part of my work in helping professional women advance in their careers to help them get into their soul. And I don't tell any of them to stop drinking. But at the same time, I know that if you are drinking, your body is in the way of your soul coming to its full peace and calm and stability. So I think as we evolve as humans, we're going to begin to move those social things out of the way. And I really admire the work that you do and applaud everyone who comes your way so that they can get the support and the help that they need to make their sober journey a little bit easier and hopefully permanent. And I'm with
Thank
you
you so
on
much.
not banning anything because it's free will is to me a big part of human life.
Absolutely. And, when I work with people, one of the things I think is really important is to say to them, I will work with you whatever your end goal is, right? So if you want to moderate, like that's what we'll work towards. If you want to be an occasional drinker, we'll work towards that. As soon as we start telling people you're not allowed, so the goal,
Right.
that doesn't
Right.
feel good, right?
Yes.
Our brain will
Yeah.
immediately start thinking of all the times we would want to drink, and that will
Yeah.
come up even if we weren't previously thinking about it. So I think that if the outcome I work with people to get is they're not bothered about it, because if you're not bothered about it, you don't feel deprived.
Yeah.
And I love what you said about connecting and being better at sharing our emotions, because the other thing I've realized as I've done this work is not only is it obviously better in the long run to not try and numb out, but actually each time we numb out, it's like we're prolonging that pain, because those emotions need to be felt. We keep pushing them down, but they'll come back up.
Yes.
So we could, like the thing that's the hardest and the most uncomfortable is going through that again and again and again. So
Exactly.
actually feeling it once, it might feel scarier, but it's a bit like, if you have a sore tooth, right? I used to have a
Yeah.
real fear of the dentist, and you could put clove oil on it. You could do a lot of things to avoid it, right? But maybe in the middle of the night, it will feel worse, right? And by the time
Yeah.
you get to the
Right.
dentist, it's worse. And I think with
Hmm.
your emotions, if we can start to understand, and this is something I think I'm certainly working through this, if I can remind myself that it's never going to be as difficult as I think, because we are designed to handle them. It's just that in our
Right.
society, we've thought that we can avoid them, but actually we can't.
Right. It'll keep coming up to show us the work we have to do. Share with us about your work, Sandra, and how people might be able to find you if they're interested in getting support on their journey away from alcohol.
Sure, and thank you. So I run an 11-week program, and it is designed for people that are drinking more than they want, whatever level that is at, and they want to get back control. I work with people who are high achievers, people who have a lot to lose. So
Mm,
if someone's successful in the other areas of their life and they've not yet hit rock bottom, and they are taking their own early intervention, and they're not doing it because someone else has told them to, then they're
right.
my ideal clients. I work with
Mm-hmm.
men and women, and
Mm-hmm.
my website is called Just the Tonic Coaching. I called my company Just the Tonic because the first year I stopped drinking. Whenever I went out for dinner to a certain restaurant, I asked for a tonic. Every week the waiter said gin and tonic, and I said no, just the tonic. So back to what you're saying about everyone assuming you're drinking. And when I decided to set up a coaching business, the first name that came in my head was Just the Tonic. So yeah, Just the Tonic Coaching. and book a call with me. And, I'm happy to give people advice. Not everybody would be right for my program, but I'll always give them my best advice based on where they're at in terms of
Yeah.
what's right for them
Yeah.
going forward.
I
And I
love it.
also just want to say that it doesn't matter if you've been drinking for 5 years or 10 years or 50 years. I've got a man in my program that's 70, celebrating his first birthday in 50 years not drinking. And it's just about if you
Right.
want to make a change.
Yeah.
If you want to make
Yeah.
a change, you absolutely can.
Yeah. And I got to say, as I was being brought up, did we lose Sandra? Sandra, did I lose you? Okay. So that's how to reach Sandra at justthetonic.coaching.com. Sandra and I have known each other for several years, and I really do encourage, if this is something that you've been interested in or thinking about, it's on your mind, it's on your heart, that would be a great way to get started, would be to have her help and expertise to help you along the way. And let me see if I can, no, I think she has left the call. So there we go. So thank you very much, Sandra Parker, for helping underscore and describe for us what it's like to move away from alcohol as an ingredient in our lives, and the benefits and some of the journey that I've had personally and that Sandra has had. So it's justthetonic.com coaching, and really, really appreciate your time, Sandra. Thank you so much for listening. Another episode of Soul Powered Career with Coach Mo. Everything that we can help you with to up level your soul and have the life that you want, which sometimes may include saying no to the alcohol. All right, we'll see you next time on Soul Powered Revolution podcast. See you next time.